There's a moment where a method either proves itself or collapses. Up to now, we have built something carefully. We've analyzed knowing. We've grounded objectivity. We've articulated metaphysical method. We derived the elements of proportionate being. But a question remains. Does it work? Not in theory, but in practice. Can metaphysics, if it follows this method, actually answer its own questions? Or is it just a framework that never delivers? Lonergan's answer is direct. You don't prove a method by arguing for it. You prove it by using it. And that is what this chapter does. It puts the method to work. So today we are going to do something slightly different. We are not introducing a new layer. We are testing the whole structure. We are going to take the method of metaphysics and apply it to distinctions, to relations, to unity, to meaning. And in doing so, we will see whether metaphysics can actually function as a science. So, to begin, let's begin with a basic idea, a distinction. And this may seem trivial. P is not Q. Okay? But Lonergan immediately complicates it because how you understand that difference depends on your theory of knowledge. If you think knowing is taking a look, then distinction is something you see. Different looks, different objects. But if knowing is judgment, this distinction is something you affirm. You affirm that P is, you affirm that Q is, and you affirm that P is not Q. So distinction is not primarily visual, it's judgmental. That already shifts everything because now distinction belongs to the level of objectivity, not to the level of appearance. Now, Lonergan classifies distinctions. Notional distinctions where both terms are just objects of thought. A centaur is not a unicorn. Okay, true, but neither of those two things are real. Problematic distinctions where we don't know yet whether the terms refer to reality. Real distinctions where both terms are real, and mixed distinctions where one is real and one is not real. These are all the kinds of distinctions he makes clear. And this all matters because metaphysics deals only with one type, real distinctions. And real distinctions depend on judgment, not on imagination, not on perception, not on what is out there, on the affirmation of being. Now, Lonergan actually pushes further. Real distinctions themselves divide. There are major distinctions between things, between individuals, between species, between genera. And there are minor distinctions between elements, between potency, form, and act, between central and conjugate structures. So, we're already seeing something. The method is working. It is organizing these distinctions. Not arbitrarily, no. What it's doing is it's organizing them according to the structure of knowing itself. Now, we move to relations, because nothing exists in isolation. Everything is related. But again, the question is, what kind of relation is real? Lonergan, what he actually gives us is a relatively powerful analysis. So let's take a simple case to demonstrate it. A is twice B. We might think that the relation is obvious, but Lonergan says break it down. He says there are two components. First, a primary relativity, the structural relation, a proportion. Second, secondary determinations, the concrete values, the actual sizes, the fact that it is twice. Now, here's the key to this. The primary relation is systematic. It belongs to explanation. It is stable. But the secondary determinations are contingent. They depend on concrete conditions. They change. They are non-systematic. So, what does that mean? It means that every concrete relation has this dual structure. It has a systematic core, and it has contingent variation. And that may seem like a minor point, but it is not a minor point. It actually, what it does is it solves a major problem. That is, the difference between internal and external relations. So, To clarify, let's look at it historically. In classical metaphysics, this is actually quite confusing. Are relations inside things or outside things? Lonergan reframes the issue entirely. Primary relations are internal, they belong to the structure of the thing, whereas secondary determinations are external, they actually vary with conditions. So both are real, but both are real in different ways. And this actually extends universally. It extends to science. It extends, as we've seen, to metaphysics. It extends to the structure of explanation itself. Now, where do we arrive with this? We actually arrive at a really crucial, central claim. The structure of reality is relational. You cannot have terms without relations, and you cannot have relations without terms. They define each other. And this is actually a decisive point, because what it does is it eliminates a whole class of metaphysical errors. The idea of isolated substances, and the idea of relations as things that are added afterwards. No. Reality is structured from the start as an interlocking system. Once we've accepted that, we can now take another step. Metaphysical equivalence. And this is actually one of Lonergan's most powerful tools, metaphysical equivalence. What does it ask? It asks, if a proposition is true, what grounds it? In the structure of being? So, let's take a simple statement. A is similar to B. Grammatically, that is one subject and one predicate. But metaphysically, it involves two beings, A and B, and the relationship between them. So, you must transpose from logical structure, where you start, to metaphysical structure. And this actually leads us to a rule. That is, what is the rule? You cannot assign metaphysical meaning to a statement until you understand it concretely, until you know what it is saying about reality itself. So, this is the rule of concreteness and the rule of explanatory formulation. Without these, metaphysics simply collapses. And it collapses into what Lonergan calls pseudo-metaphysics, where people take descriptive experience, colors, sounds, sensations, and treat it as if it were explanatory, taking it as is. And that leads straight back. It leads straight back to naive realism, to already out there now, to the illusion that knowing is just taking a look. So, the method actually protects you. It actually forces you to move from description to explanation to judgment. You see the structure at work again? So that means we reach a deeper issue now. Unity. If reality is composed of multiple elements, potency, form, act, how is it one? Lonergan's answer to this is actually quite subtle. The elements are distinct, but they are not separate. They are intrinsically related. Potency is potency to form. Form is form of act. Act is act of potency informed by form. There is no need for some sort of metaphysical glue because the relations are already there. They're built into the definitions. So that means concerning unity, the unity is not added. It is intrinsic. It is of the same form. It's isomorphic. So now, I think we can turn to a special case, the unity of the universe. Lonergan actually describes it in three ways. Potential unity, the empirical residue, the manifold of possibilities. Formal unity, That is, the levels of organization, physics, chemistry, biology, consciousness, and actual unity, the realized order, the intelligible structure. And this actually leads us to a striking conclusion. The universe is not static. It is developmental. It unfolds through emergent probability and through successive integrations. And this actually connects back. It connects back to everything we have seen in the previous episodes. So, in order to demonstrate this a little bit more, let's take the most difficult case, the unity of man. Because man is both material and spiritual, hylomorphic. Man is material because we are embedded in physical, chemical, biological processes. Man is spiritual because we understand, we judge, we know. So, how can one being, man, be both these things? Lonergan's answer is through intelligibility. Material intelligibility includes the empirical residue. It is tied to space, to time, variability. Spiritual intelligibility abstracts from it. It grasps universals. It reaches the unconditioned. So the difference is not two substances. It is two modes of intelligibility. And man is one, because one subject performs both. This is grounded in central form, the unity of the subject, the same subject that experiences, that understands, that judges. Now, here is the crucial implication. If intelligibility is intrinsic to being, then knowing is not external to reality. It is part of it. It is built into it. And that brings us to the final claim. Metaphysics can be a science. Now, don't confuse that. It can be a science, but not in the sense of physics, not by experiment or by measurement. What he means by that is that it's in the sense of method. What does that mean? Well, metaphysics has a defined field. It has proportionate being, a defined method, an analysis of knowing, a defined criterion, and of course, the structure of cognition. And above all that, it can test itself, because any claim must satisfy conditions. But does it refer to being? Does it align with the structure of knowing? Is it grounded in evidence? It is a position, or is it a counterposition? If not, then simply put, it's not metaphysics. And this eliminates endless disputes in philosophy. And it does so not by force, but as we mentioned time and time again, it does so by method. That being said, though, Lonergan is careful. This does not make metaphysics automatic. It does not remove difficulty, and it does not eliminate disagreement, far from it. Because method requires intelligence. It requires reasonableness, and it requires sustained effort. But nonetheless, it does do something crucial. It provides us with an orientation. It gives us a direction, and it allows us to progress. That is just like science. So, it is like science, not by convincing everyone, no, but by establishing a path, by establishing a path that holds, and that holds over time. So, where does all this bring us? This brings us to the final insight. The method of metaphysics is not about winning arguments. What it actually is about transforming inquiry itself. It begins with a breakthrough, the structure of knowing. It expands into an encirclement, that is, the notion of being. And it ends in confinement, that is, the rejection of incoherent positions. And from that, a science becomes possible. So, if we have to say what the thesis is of episode 16 and the corresponding chapter of the book, metaphysics is a science, but not because it has experiments, but because it has a method that can test, ground, and develop its own claims through the structure of knowing. And here's a simple practice. Take any philosophical claim and ask, what does it affirm? What does it ground? Does it align with the structure of knowing? Is it a position or a counterposition? If you can do that, that means you are no longer just reading philosophy, you're actually doing it. So next time, in our next episode, we move beyond method into full systematic metaphysics. So if this helped, I ask you to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because at this point, the system is complete. What remains is to use it.